Hello and welcome to Steven University. This week we discuss the episode House Guest, which is an episode in which, after the events of the previous episode, Greg's van is broken, as is his leg. Admittedly, the wrong leg, if you're actually keeping track, but I'm guessing that's just an animation cock-up, but still, the wrong leg. But anyway, he has hurt his leg, and Steven tries to heal it. As it has been brought up that he might be able to stay with the gems while he's hurt, he pretends, basically, that it's not worked, which messes with Steven's head and makes him think he doesn't have good use of his powers anymore. And then when a gem situation requires him to use his healing powers, he can't do it because it's all sort of psychological, and sort of Greg's messed with him. And then, of course, there's the conflict itself between Steven and Greg when Steven finds this out. And, of course, the gem situation is resolved by good old duct tape. So I'm curious. I'm completely split, Chris, about whether you're going to enjoy this episode or not, because I think I think the majority of this episode is extremely good and very well done and very clever, but I think there is one thing that could be a real sticking point for you, which is the Greg's lie. So I am very eager to know whether that put you off to the point where you're going to come out with a negative or positive opinion, particularly after enjoying last week so much. So, Chris, end the suspense. What do you think?
I just think don't worry about it, Dan. Just concentrate on your own feelings for the episode. Why do you need to worry about mine so much?
It's the point of the podcast.
It's true. It's true. My big takeout is, and I love it for this reason, is the love's a strong word, but it is the single most ridiculous conclusion to an episode we've ever had. The duct tape thing.
More ridiculous than water on cats?
Yes, because at least whilst it was batshit crazy, there was a logic to that. It would rip through the duct tape, surely, Dan.
Yeah,
but anyway,
you would imagine so. You would imagine so.
So there's that, but fine, because it, nice moment, cool, whatever. The lie didn't bother me because I knew it was a lie from the beginning. Like, it was obvious it was a lie. So that was just quite a sweet, cute, ill-judged thing that he was doing.
Gotcha.
I quite like. I was not overwhelmed, but I was surprised at the beginning to see it continue straight on from last week's.
Yep.
And I liked that. And you spoke a lot last week about how that episode was a bit of a turning point, and the fact that it kind of flowed so immediately on backed that up. It was a bit like, oh, it's doing story arcs now, maybe a little bit. But
what's interesting is it's one that's connected enough to reward a persistent viewer. But if you're just watching random episodes, it's light enough that you could just go, okay, his van's got trashed and his leg's hurt. Maybe he had an accident. Maybe it was something that happened in a previous episode. Like, it's not enough to make you not be able to follow the content of the episode. It's not. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Arguably not true of some of the very most recent episodes.
Right, okay.
So, but yeah.
But that's fine, I think, when you get
deeper into
the show.
Absolutely, yeah.
I enjoyed it. Like, I thought there was enough. There was a song. There was some nice Steve and Dad stuff. I liked that he sort of fought back a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit like, oh, it's a shame that it wasn't that mental link and his healing powers did then work. But actually, I think that him not having quite all the answers and not being quite sufficiently skilled yet is probably more interesting for the show long term than he can suddenly do that. I think that that's such an important power that actually having a reason for it not to be the get out every single week is good. So although
limitations at this stage, because it's such a strong, he's almost overpowered. When you think about all the things Steven has been revealed to be able to do, he's already got a lot of powers that none of the other gems have. So you sort of think like, you have to give it limitations because otherwise it's too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I like I think one of the reasons I'm like that and is ridiculous is because the ending you want is for Steven to heal it, and that's what you want, and you don't get that, and you're a bit like, oh, duct tape, really? But like I say, I can see that for the show long term, that's absolutely the right thing to do.
And also, I do like the idea that like the doubts created in him by Greg really are playing a more long-term effect. Even though he now knows that he did successfully heal him, his doubts and the stuff we've talked about in a previous episode of this show, which is Stephen's like fear that he's not one of them, that he's not as good as these expectations that are thrown upon him as a result of Rose Quartz being so kind of revered by the other gems, and his desire to want to be one of them. I think that is like, again here, quite evident the pressure that's on him to be one of the gems and to be as good. And even though he's very happy and clappy about it, he sort of runs around like in his little Stephen way, seeming quite positive about everything. In moments like that, when you see him crying because he thinks he can't do it anymore, you realize like how much pressure is on this kid, and it's moments like that that really round that character off, I think. So it's very important that they do stuff like that. So I was very fond, even though the way they got there was through his dad lying, which I think some people would have a problem with because it doesn't necessarily feel in character with Greg, because Greg's, generally speaking, seemed quite an honest, nice guy. But when you hear his logic, and I just wanted to spend time with my son, I just wanted to live with my son again, which is the line we'll get to in a minute because there's an implication there as well. But I think that justifies it personally. But I do know other fans have seen that and found that to be problematic, out of character.
He also, let's not forget, he also just went on an adventure, and for the first time, there's a line in Ocean Gem where he says, like, "Is this what all adventures are like? I should stop letting you go out on this."
Yeah, I think he says, "I'm not sure." I think the exact line is, "I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this."
Yeah, and so like, of course, he would suddenly want to cocoon and protect his son. Like, I think it makes complete sense to lie. Like, yeah,
I agree. I just wasn't sure which side you'd land on because I've heard other people echo those complaints. So when I'm watching this, I'm going, I think there's a lot of good stuff in this episode, but occasionally, one bad thing can really overshadow. One thing that bothers a person could overshadow the rest of their opinions on a thing, and it could become the dominant thought, if that makes sense. We've all seen really good films that have terrible endings and just been really angry. Do you know what I mean? But I'm glad to see in this case you agree with me, which is I think it works perfectly.
Definitely. And so what were you saying? So yeah, the implication that he did live with them, and then maybe when he started getting more gem-like powers, he started living with the gems. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I took from it when I first watched it. I think that's interesting because, well, it makes a lot of sense because we've seen in the past he's got even in his very first appearance when Stephen goes to him with the problem of that big thing in the sky, and he's like, this is gem stuff? No. I can't help you with gem stuff. Go talk to the gems. Even though at that point all the gems were trying to do to stop that big eye thing in the sky was chuck amethyst at it, which still makes me chuckle to this day. But like we know that he has at least early. I mean, maybe the more he gets sucked into it, he's been involved in 2 in a row now, where he's been more directly involved in the events that are transpiring. So maybe as he gets more sucked in, he'll become more willing to be involved in that world. But it feels like in the past he was very separate from it. And I think your thinking is along the same lines as mine at this stage, when I was at this point in the show, which is clearly at some point, it sounds like Stephen was living with him, but then in order to give Stephen some of that side of his life from his mum's side, it was decided that he would move in with the crystal gems themselves, and that must have been a very hard decision for Greg because he clearly loves his son and wants to spend time with his son, and that gives the whole story yet another layer of tragedy, as if all the other stuff we've been sampling so far wasn't enough. The pressure on Stephen, the fact that his existence erased his mum's existence, how the gems themselves must feel about that, like. Now add this extra element of, this whole gem situation has also taken you away from your dad in a weird way. That's it. There's so much going on, and I think that's really it's very complex, but it's all there, even though it's not necessarily outright being directly dealt with at this point. But the hints are very tantalizing, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree. It's a very layered episode in a way. Well, I layered in what it does for their storyline and for the dad storyline. And then there's some nice comedy. I thought Amethyst being really sweet and then adding that she wanted a croissant was funny. The Pearl trying to fix the van stuff was good.
Yes.
So yeah, I found it odd that they weren't there when they went back to like. We need to work out another plan to get rid of the crack. Seemingly, their plan was to just bugger off somewhere else.
No, I think if you look where they go in the background, they go into the actual temple properly to their rooms. So I'm guessing they're going back to either research or find an object that might help. That's my assumption. And then in the meantime, Stephen and his dad actually go through and through the warp pad, because the frustration there is from a design perspective. The warp pad, which is how they get around the other gem locations that are that are on Earth. They behind that is that door that leads to their rooms. And they're directly behind each other. So you see them walk towards one, unless you're really paying attention, you don't know where they've gone necessarily. But in this case, if you watch, you'll see that they walk over the warp pad to the rooms and go through the door into the.
Do you think there's a reason not? Do you think there's a reason not to have them witness the moments of the dad trying to help?
What would they add? They just don't do it. It's dangerous.
Yeah, but they aren't. It might have helped that they start the episode. No, I get the feeling Garnet knows that he's lying. Her kind of is an indication of that, and that part for me, maybe it's a bit fansplaining, but I think that informs her decision to let Stephen try and close the crack as well to kind of prove he was lying. I thought
again, the thing with Garnet is we don't know how far her foresight goes, but yeah, you can. No. With her, you can always question whether she really knows already how it's going to play out, or has a good idea.
True. Yeah. But she was like, she definitely had a moment at him saying 100%. That. So they start a bit annoyed by him and a bit like, no, we don't want him hanging around, let's fix the van, etc. So if they'd have seen him be willing to really put himself in danger and be willing to work with Stephen, it might have they have no reason to change their opinion on Greg from the episode's beginning to the episode's end. Whereas I think if you put them in that scene, they potentially would.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you've got to assume, though, I will say, and this is fansplaining as well, which is you've got to assume that when they came out, the gems went, "What's happened with the geode?" To which Stephen replied, "My dad fixed it." So I suppose ultimately they would have known what happened, because they would have had to have found out, because otherwise Pearl and Garnet are like written around to find something to fix it, go back, with whatever the hell they found, and they get just fine again. Which is a pretty odd thing in itself. I also thought the episode got a lot of good comedy out of his dad calling him back from that adventure constantly for stupid things. My favourite reason being, "Oh, you just missed the best commercial." Which I thought that was great. Something about that. Oh, actually, no, my favourite one, tell a lie, my absolute favourite one was when he goes back and he's like, "Where is the remote?" And Steven's like, "That is important." And when he goes back through the portal, they're like, "What was wrong?" And he was like, "Something important." It's very funny. Yeah.
That's good. And a good song as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny that I've rediscovered that song recently, so it's coincidental that because from the point of recording this, the soundtrack came out 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was never one of my go-tos with the songs of this. There are songs further down the line that are like really like incredible songs with real like heart and meaning behind them. But when I got the soundtrack, I was listening to it, and it was like, oh yeah, there's Cookie Cat and there's Giant Woman. We like that song. That's nice. And then what was the other one, the more recent one? Strong in the Real Way. Great. And then I got to this one. I was like, I'd kind of forgotten that song existed, but it is a really great song. And I re-listened to it a couple of times. Like I specifically played that track a few times. So I sort of discovered how sweet and nice and sort of lighthearted and fun that song is more recently. So it was really weird to rewatch the episode now and see it again in context, having sort of found an appreciation for it that I didn't previously have.
I think it's bizarre, though, that they both sing in two different pitches, or at least I don't know the correct musical term, but that's certainly what it sounded like to me. Like there was like each of them had two vocal tracks, one that was slightly higher or deeper than the other.
Mm-hmm. I'd say that's probably true. Yeah, they were. I think they were trying to harmonise. I don't know if it fitted quite well, but it did. Well,
I think I would have preferred just one vote, instead of four vocals, essentially two vocals. But yeah, well.
I really I genuinely did like it. It's a really nice song, and the version of it that's on the soundtrack is cleaner because obviously it's officially released now. So it's good. It's because, like I said the other day, it's finally nice to have Giant Woman's song without the goat noise at the end, because because there you go. It's just one of those things. In fact, what I might start doing, I don't know. Are you interested in listening to any of this music outside of the show at this point, or are you just like, it's fine for the show? I wouldn't listen to it on my headphones walking about.
Yeah, I probably at this point wouldn't. Even if you sent it to me, I probably wouldn't load it on my phone and walk along the street. I do sometimes. Like the other day at work, I was like, "All I wanna do is turn into," but not enough to be like, I gotta listen to that song.
Gotcha.
That
is
presumably
so
it might be on Apple Music anyway. So although there'd be spoilers, wouldn't there?
Thankfully the soundtrack is in order. So Let me just look it up just to double check. Steven Universe. Yeah. So if you look, they've done it. So as long as you listen to them in the track order, you should be fine. Because when you look at it, you'll see it starts with the simple version of the theme tune. Then Let Me Drive My Van Into Your Heart, which is from the second episode, sorry. Then Giant Woman, Strong in the Real Way, Steven in the Stevens. No, there is, weirdly, either that's a cock-up on my end, or there's a song called Lapis Lazuli between that and Dear Old Dad, which is weird. That makes it out of order. I think that's a mistake. I think I've numbered something wrong here on my version of that soundtrack. Because I don't see Wailing Stone either. That's vanished. Where's that gone? So there's something a bit weird going on with mine here, basically, is what I'm getting at. So, but yeah, I think they're in the order that they appear in the show. So you'd be able to give that a listen up to a certain point.
Cool. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So is that everything? I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. Well, next week's episode, I believe, is called Space Race.
Ooh.
It's a fun one. I'll say that. I'll tantalize you with that. Oh, I'll tell you what, no, I'll give you a better I'll give you a bit more tantalization. Actually, there's one other thing I could say which doesn't really give anything away, but might potentially intrigue you. I think it's a slightly more Pearl-centric episode, if I'm remembering correctly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I like Pearl.
Yeah, me too. I think she is an underrated character. In fact, can I just say actually, the one thing we haven't really complimented yet is the voice acting. And I just want to say, like, to the entire cast, those guys do a fantastic job. A really good job. They're so multi-talented. They're able to deliver jokes, serious lines. They sing. They've all given their characters such distinct personalities. Like the way that the Garnet's sort of sternness and Amethyst's sort of like chaotic sort of like it all comes from the voice actors. I think a lot of it, and I think that we don't give them enough credit on this podcast. So yeah, thumbs up to the voice cast. They do a wonderful job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tom Sterling, the guy that voices Greg as well. He's made that character very lovable, and I'm not sure with another voice the character would have come across quite as.
Yeah, it's a big part of that character, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one to get just right. So yeah, 10 points.
Absolutely.
Whatever that means.
In the point system.
In whatever point system I've just invented now in this second. Great, yeah. So that's everything for this week. I'm Dan Doolan.
I'm Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next week as we discuss Space Race.